Hello again. What I thought I'd show you today, or share with you today, or start today as a project, is something that I saw from this rather lovely little magazine that we picked up called Land Love, because obviously with our gardening and country interest we're interested in magazines like this. It seems to be a very good publication, but within it I was very impressed by this chap's work, Peter Tree, and he makes beautiful chairs and furniture, and in this case this particular chair on the beginning of the article. Absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to base a chair on his design, and my thanks, Peter, for putting this article in. Love your work. I'm going to base a chair on that design, and I hope we've got enough wood to do it. I've already sketched out a little plan. I'll show you here. So it's a very rough plan, just to get an idea of how much wood I'm going to need, and I'm only estimating the sizes. So I don't consider myself to be a fantastic joiner or cabinet maker, but I do like to share what I do, and I'm sure some of you will write in and give us more tips about how you would do this or do it differently, or maybe even improve it. But I thought it might just be nice to share it with you as I progress through this project, and we'll see what we finish up with. And some of you might enjoy it enough to have a go yourselves, which is what these videos are about. It's about sharing the skills, it's about sharing the process, it's about sharing learning, and what we can achieve together. Okay, let's have a go at it then. We'll lay the wood out first and just see what we've got, and then if we think we've got enough wood, I'll make a start on this project. I've only got a very basic workshop here. Dog, and all my tools lined up on the wall where I can get at them. Just straightforward and simple. You can hear it's raining outside at the moment. Quite a cool day here, very early spring in England. My power tools down below, and various tools for sharpening chainsaws or doing framing and so on. And a lathe across here which we're going to need for doing the spindles and the legs. So very basic workshop, quite small, just shows what you can do with a small shed like this. Well, the first thing is to make sure we've got enough wood. So that's 4 lengths that I've got, and my width of them they need to be 19 fours into 19, 4 fours, 16, 5 fours are 20. So we're pushing it on width, isn't it? I can get 4 out. 4 fours are 16, 17, 18, 19. I'm going to need one more piece to make that width. So the first thing is to cut these to length and plane them up and put them together to make my basic rectangle for the base, the seat. I'm going to start with the seat because everything's going to go below it or above it, everything's going to centre around it. That's my logic anyway. Mark these are 2 foot lengths. They've got a square edge here, so I'll just take my tri-square and prepare those for cutting. And then just use a jigsaw to cut through. And we'll adjust things as we go along. I found that jigsaw rather small for this heavy wood, so I've gone to a much bigger saw now, and that will do the job more quickly and more easily. Next job is to take off this excess wood and get my planks ready for the base. I've clamped it down to the bench. I'm going to work in most of the way, then turn it round and finish off. Again, I haven't got a great big circular saw, I've only got this rip snorter, so I'm having to make do with limited tools, but hopefully we'll manage. Make sure the cable's well out of the way before you start. Not going to slice through your electric cable. Do a nice straight cut all the way along there, nice and level. Now I've turned the wood around, we've got the cut to finish off that way. And there we are, that's that surface prepared ready for planing. Now we've got the 3 others to do. Well, here's those 4 pieces cut, so that makes 17, and I need at least 19. So I'm going to cut another one to 20 because of the planing up, because we're going to obviously lose a little bit on that. So I want another 1, 2, 3 inches, don't I? I reckon this off cut out there will do, because we're quite short on time, but it's a fraction shorter, but we're going to be doing a curve anyway, and I need to lose this edge. Right, there we are then, those are 5 lengths. Now it's a matter of joining them up. Now for joining these pieces together, what I'm going to do first of all is plane up the edges, and when they're nice and flat, we'll mark off points where I want to drill holes and put in lengths of dowel rod to strengthen the joints in between. Then using this tool called a sash clamp, we'll clamp the whole lot together, compressed. That'll all dry off, and then we're ready to start working on the actual base itself as a whole. The first tool I'm going to take is my electric planer and plane all of these level. Right, that's our pieces planed off. I'm going to lay them all out, just clean off the bench. And there we have enough for our base for the seat, nice big and broad. And the rougher edges I've put underneath facing, so the only two rough edges we've got are under the chair and they'll curve upwards. What we've got to do next is mark off where these joints are going to go with the dowel rods. In other words, I'm going to put these little pieces of dowel rod joining all the way across. And I would think that, 4 will be enough on each one. So if I just mark those off, I've got the pieces of wood where I want them now already. And we're going to mark the pieces of wood in order: A, B, B, C, C. So right from the beginning we know which pieces are which. It's easy to get confused doing a job like this. One. A bit more taking off that. So as we go along, we've got to just check these are all nice and level. But this one looks as if it needs a little bit more off this piece. I'll just plane a little bit more off that before I do anything else to get it perfect. There we are. We've got our A, B, C's and D's. They're all in the right position. Now we just need to mark them across. We'll do that all in the same places. 1, 2, 3, 4 across. It doesn't matter if they differ slightly on each one, because we're not going to see these joints at all. And then once we've got those marked, we'll use the tri-square to the centre of the wood, and dead on the centre we'll mark across, and that's where we're going to drill a hole big enough to take the dowel to go each way and glue in. Right, there's my marks for the drilling, and the dowel we're going to use is this, so I need a drill that size, which in this case is this, you can see here. And now we've got to make sure that it's nice and vertical, place it straight on, make sure it's dead on that mark. Going in just over 1 inch. The idea will be that we cut off these dowel rod lengths to fit into the alternate or the opposing piece of wood, and it will help to lock them into place and make a stronger joint. So I will simply mark these off about that width, cut a whole load of those, and they'll be glued in when I do the job. Right, what we have to do now is check that all of these fit together, because I found if you do start and you get them slightly wrong and you've got glue on, it's a right mess. So just slop them together first of all and make sure they all work, and if they do, then you know you're going to be alright to glue up. Like that, you see. Right, as you see, all the pieces now fit together. There was one little bit of adjustment to do, so it was worth my doing this little test first, just to make sure things were going to fit. Which we've already done, so it should fit. There we go. And now I'm ready to glue together. And they have to be set so that when that clamp tightens up, it will push all the pieces of wood together. Now normally we put a little bit of waste wood in between these two, but as I'm going to be trimming all these edges off anyway, I'm not too worried about a slight mark. Pull this up, slide it along, all the way down until we get as near as we can to that particular joint. There we go. push that back into the hole, and that will now be ready to tighten up. So the two set ready to place underneath. Now it's simply a matter of gluing them up before we tighten the cess clamps up. Let's take this off, and glue ready. I'm going to use some white strong PVA glue. Make sure there's plenty of it. Doesn't matter if it squeegees out. We want to make sure that there's plenty of glue on all surfaces, on all this surface. Don't need to do both the surfaces. And then we'll just make sure that hello doggy, or that the dowel rods have a bit on as well. And we do the same with all of the rest of the joints, gradually putting them together. That's now glued ready. We can put this one into that one. Right, we've got the glue done, so now it's a matter of clamping up. So once we've got these up and level, we can tighten up. So you could put a bit of waste wood in here if you don't want to mark them. I'm not too worried because I'm going to plane these down yet. And then we just got to let that dry off, and then we can plane them and shape up the whole piece. We've a lot more work to do on that yet. Right, so we've just made that part as a basic. I think now we need to start looking at the arms and the back of the chair here, those pieces, because we want to get the biggest pieces of wood sorted out first. So I need to start looking at my bits of wood and seeing what I've actually got there. Well, yes, we're going to be very short on timber for this. I might have to redesign it slightly, but we need the legs next. They're very important, obviously, and they want to be about 2.5 inches thick. Well, I'm having to think a little bit as I go on. The amount of wood I've got in U is not going to be enough in itself, so I'm going to do a mixed wood. I'm going to use a piece of ash here to slice up for the legs. I'm going to have the legs in different wood and mix the wood in. So I'll have to take some strips off here for the legs. Right, so what we'll do is take off these lengths for the legs from this bit of ash. And rather than using a little jigsaw with this heavy hard wood, much better with a much bigger saw. Right, the next job, ready for the lathe for these, to prepare them, is to round them all off the best we can by planing off all the corners. So we find the centre by just going through a cross here, and we can make a circle by just taking those corners off, just to give ourselves an idea, because all we need to do is just make it as large as we can within this square. Now if we take that off, you'll see we're rounding off here with a knock on all 4 pieces, and we're ready to go on the lathe. There we are then, that's round enough for what we need to go on the lathe. We just need to get all the other 4 pieces done now. The legs rounded off and prepared for the lathe. Next I want to think about this lovely backrest here. I think I can get up to this piece of wood, but I want it to be about 3 inches high and curved, so I'm going to have to slice a curve out. Now the ideal thing for that would be a bandsaw, which I don't have, so it's going to take a lot more work. I want that to be about 25 by 3. I'll cut that out of this. Should just make it. We've sliced that to the right height. Now I've marked the curve at 1.5 inch thickness around here. I've got to take off the ends of the curve, and I've got to take off the inside of this. I'm going to do the ends with the plane, but I'm going to have to use my chainsaw just to cut into here a little bit, I think, and then round out with a chisel. Round off these edges, this curve on the outside edge of the back of the headrest. But unfortunately this morning we've had to stop play a little bit because The planer blades have disintegrated on here, just sheerly through metal fatigue and age, so I've had to order some more from eBay. We'll wait for those, but in the meantime, although we can't carry on planing the backrest, the headrest, the base has dried, so I can now start to look at that and shape that up, and also we can start to do the work on the lathe and cut the rest of the pieces to size that we need as well. So now we can remove these sash clamps. I find that that really heavy piece of wood now is hopefully all glued together beautifully. It is a heavy piece, it will do very well for the... So now I have to draw out the shape of this, the base of this seat as I want it, which will be slightly larger at the front and smaller at the back. We'll just find our centre line again to make sure that we get things nice and level. Centre line to this, 2 foot 24, 1 foot there. And if I now get a square, let's go across that, make sure we get the right side of it. There we go. Pop a piece of wood at the corner here to maybe go a little bit narrower. Maybe we'll go to curve from there. Let's see how that looks, shall we? First, and then a nice curve to about there. Here, so we say a nice. Set this up and so that we can work on the rounding of these corners. We can do with a surf form, one of these cheese grating tools if you like, actually working our way around like that. The next part I'm going to need to cut is this, the arms and the backrest here, support, which is going to be a fraction wider than the chair, and I've got to cut it in at least 3 pieces. I've got to cut these 2 side arms and the back and the curve. This gives me a nice gentle curve for the back of the chair. That's a nice shape for my back, and it will come in just beyond the width of the back of the chair and outwards. But now we've got to cut this curve out, so although it's only a couple of inches thick, it's very hard when I'm going to try the small jigsaw, see how it works. Cut the outside edges off. We'll do this one first. And there we are, the back shape basically cut out. We've got to trim around here and make the edge neater later, but all that'll work out. This gives you a better idea of how the back will fit, and the arms will come out in line here. So now I've got to mark up these 2 arms that want to come out here. I've still got plenty of wood left for that. We don't want to waste our wood, so we should better get both arms out of this, I'm hoping. The length that we're going to need is just a little bit over at the end here, so give myself a little bit more, say 16 inches. We've got to use the maximum we can because we don't have a lot of wood, and if we do have a few little slightly wavy edges because of it, well, that can't be helped, but it's more rustic that way. I don't want anything too fancy and too fine. Beautiful wood. There we are, we'll just get it out of that then. There's our 2 arms. Now I want to make a couple of pieces to come off here to curve onto there, but also from here I can make the 10-inch backrests. I've got plenty of room there to do that. But to do it I'm going to have to slice lengthways along here, which is going to take a little bit of doing. And that wants to be about 3 inches wide. Right, here's the length of my back panels, the vertical ones, the 10-inch ones, which I'm going to have to try and slice in half in a moment. First of all, I just want to cut these curves out. So to do that I'm going to cut along here with my jigsaw first and then around. Circle, these parts here will now be the outer edges to go on the rounder parts of the arm. nicely. And there we are, there's one half of the arm that's going to come out at the end to give the curve. Now I've got quite a difficult part because I've got to slice right the way along this both ways. I don't have a great big bandsaw, I've only got my rib snorter, so that I've got the thin panels for the back. And there we are, it'll take a bit of planing down, but I've got our two parts there. Just come apart with a bit of persuasion. Go. So they'll thin down a bit, but you only wanted thin panels anyway, so those will have to be planed down later. And these little rounds that are going to go at the end of the handles here, like that, and curve in. I shall then curve this round like that. We shall glue those on in the same way as we did the base by putting two dowel rods in here. Before I do that, I'm just going to cut a curve out of here and then do the same on this side, using that as a template. Give this rather nice shape. Next I just have to mark off where those dowel rods are going to go inside to give it the strength when I join up the piece yet, the chair yet, and then we'll glue it all up in one go and bit by bit and leave that to dry. My electric planer has failed at the moment, so I've got to use my hand planes. Just to get a nice level starting point. Go that way a bit. There we go. Now this way. Check that. Yes, that's okay. I've just got to bring across these marks from the... And we don't want to drill too deep, we've only got to go about ½ inch into there. And check those about halfway, a little bit more. And we'll test those and see. BB. There we go. Just that'll go on nice and tightly. There we are, they're ready to glue up. Now we want to make the joints at the far end. And now we have to cut some tenons into here, some halving joints. I'm going to take a slice out of here and put the arms into that. Rather than use the doweling, I want a slightly stronger joint that'll look a bit neater as well. So I'm going to mark all the way around here, an inch first of all. Decided on an inch instead of an inch and a quarter. Can't really afford to waste the wood. Like that. And that's our waste wood we're going to have to cut out. And we'll do the same on the other one. But once we've got these cut, we're going to draw around them anyway to make sure that they'll be a nice tight fit. We'll use a tenon saw to cut down that in a moment. Now, something I nearly forgot just now was that of course I'm setting these arms at an angle, the same angle as the chair. So I've got to readjust these shoulder joints so that they will be the same angle. So when I've remarked those, I'll cut those shoulder joints to those angles. Now I need to use a tenon saw, which is this, to cut these joints. Start off just drawing it back on the joint. Punch when it's done. If the saw sticks a little bit, just put a little bit of oil down it. Don't want too much because you don't want the wood to soak it up too much and stop the glue, but it does help the saw not to stick. And now I've got to cut the shoulders by cutting across at that angle. Make sure that the shoulders are the same height. There we go. Just make sure it's nice and neat. And now by taking off just a little more wood and having these at the right angle to the actual joint, we're able to turn them into a mortise and tenon joint. There we go. Two male tenons ready for the female mortises. First thing to do is to drill down to the depth of my tenons. Right, once the drill holes have been done, we just need to sharpen up and tidy up the whole joint. Move this across a bit. Of course, this joint is a hidden tenon anyway, so we're not going to actually see any of it. Have it right, our tenon should just fit into there as neatly as that. Both pieces done. Glue up these arms and put those side pieces on. In this case I'm going to use a twin bond adhesive, not the white one. I want a little bit more strength. You can see how that clamp works and how the screw holds it here in place to push in that direction. Next I've just got to glue it. And that's now fully glued together, so I'll just let it set. Well, there we are, there's the base made and the arms. What to do is plane them and shape them, and the same with this. We've got to take a lot out of here yet in carving and shape it all up, but I want to plane the outside first. I've got to wait for the plane blades. I want to level it off, plane around the edges, get the shape just right. Then I've got to start taking out where the legs go, here, and the bottom. Right. Moving on to what's left of the wood, I've only got 3 pieces left. I've got these arms to do here. I want those to be about 16 inches long because these are 10 at the back. So I'm going to have to try and get 2 out of this if I can, and then everything else has to be used for spindles, and whatever I can't get out of the wood I'm going to have to use with the ash. Well, there we are, there's the base made, and well, before the planer blades broke, I managed just to plane down these pieces ready to go on the lathe. What I've got to do now is cut one line across here with the saw just to make a mark, ready to take this part of the lathe, and the other part will go onto the pointy end here, just be tapped on. I'm going to show you how they set the lathe up. So I just have to cut across this line here first of all, just enough that the blade can get a grip. Now we've got to set all of this up so that that bit of wood goes onto here, this slides up to there. At the moment it's completely undone. Put the slot across, I use a hammer. Mallet, just right, that's now locked up. Now I have to turn this until it's tight on there and move this out to start off with about here, making sure that that doesn't touch it at all. Lock up that one. This is for our tools to go on. And let's take a look at the tools we've got up here. Important piece of equipment, the goggles, which you should always wear, or glasses if you wish. And then we've got various gouges. So all of these different blades for different purposes on the lathe. First thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of oil. Just put a little bit of oil on the end here, just while the lathe gets going, to stop the wood from burning. I'm going to need a pair of calipers as well to check the width of this, because every of the 4 legs has to be the same. We're going to make a leg out of this piece. So we've got it on, now it's going to tighten up. It's nice and tight here. While we can try and up this, top like this, and here, so our chest and gently touch the edge. The first part is to rough this up into a cylinder all the way along, none of these flat edges, and then we can start to shape and form the leg and make them all the same afterwards. Here you can see I've now got that rounded, and I've got to make the whole piece that thickness and even all the way along before I can start to shape. Now half done. Now I have to move this part along, the gouge rest, the chisel rest. So make sure it's tight. Start again. Almost done here now. Got this little piece to do to finish off. Our next part is to start making the shape of these legs, and you can see we've got a leg like that. We've got to mark off just where these thick and thin pieces are going to be, the heights that we're going to want. Looks to me like the end of that leg is about there, which places that just over halfway, about 2/3 of the way up. What you do now is just hold the pencil against this when it's running, a mark where I want everything to come. I have to leave a spigot, I have to leave like a round 10 to go into the hole into the bottom of the seat. This is the foot of the leg, that's where the support's going to come out. I'm going to make exactly the same one 3 times over, but I do have to leave about an inch here to go into the chair. Now I've got to decide the width I want this to be and set up my calipers. Let's say it's 1.5 inches, it would be that. So this is my largest drill, and if I make the calipers to that, all I've got to do is make sure that this is about to that same size. There we are. Right, all I have to do is hold the glass paper against it. As you can see, it sands it very nicely. So we just have to make 3 more of those. Well, here's all the legs made, all the same size, almost exactly the same shape as we need. Now we've got to go on to the rest of the chair. When we're having to cut off larger pieces of wood, the chainsaw. Well, now I'm making the U-struts. The chair, I'm just measuring up the calipers, actually more up there. They look rather nice, this older timber. Well, the planer blades have now arrived, so I can refit that and get on with planing off these legs and arms that I need to finish off. Right, now the planer's working again. The first thing I want to do is the arms and the back of the chair here, get those levelled off and rounded up, and we'll start to almost finish every single part of the chair before we assemble it. Once we've got the basic planing done, we've got to start the shaping, so the surf on is very useful for that. We've just been using a straight surf form, but of course we've got ones with curved blades as well, and round blades, so we can get into these sorts of shapes. I finished rounding up the handles to the seat. Now I've just been shaping up the back headrest. I've got to go on the inside edge now. Just to help myself, I've taken the chainsaw and cut all the way along in little strips, so I've only got to cut those blocks out. Now whilst doing that, as I discovered, as I thought, we've got the bark going right through this piece of wood here, so I'm going to have to use a fair amount of twin mix resin glue and stick that back on again, let it dry. Then I shall carry on cutting and hope to get, even though a strange joint there, I still hope to get some sort of a reasonable finish on the back. That dry off, and in the meantime I'll plane these 2 pieces down for the backrest. Well, the seat of the chair is now at its basic preparation, rounded and flattened off and bevelled, and I've also put a bevel across the bottom front. I've marked out where I want the leg shapes to go, the cheeks of the bum here, so I'm going to use my chainsaw now just to slice in to the depth I want, and then I'll be gouging it out later, bit by bit. Do here next then is take out a nice gentle curve here and meet up with those saw marks. Lower at the front edge. Cleared that side, now I've got to work on this side. See, we've nearly finished the forming of it. Just got to watch the grain here because it goes into reverse in a couple of places. You can see the grain goes downward there but comes upwards here, so I've got to go in opposite directions here. Basic roughing up of that. Give it a brush off, you can see it. Now it's just a matter of getting in there with a file and getting it really smooth. What we can do as well is use a grinding disc, not a cutting disc, a grinding disc to take down the surface. We've already taken it out with the gouge. I want to smooth it right down and shape it more evenly. As smooth as I'm going to get it doing it that way. I just want to finish off with the vibrating sander now, and this down now. Well, there's the back of the chair, the top rail complete as much as I want to do it. A little rounding at the edges, that's all. The components just about put together. We've got some lathe work to do here. These spindles are so thin that I think I'm going to have to use a spoke shave rather than the lathe to bring them down. I'm doing each one by hand, so they'll all be a little individual, they'll all be not quite the same. These pieces now cut. I've only got these ones to finish off on the lathe and spoke shave, so I'll get back on the lathe now to do the rest of the turning before the spoke shaving, and then we put the thing together. And of course we've got to sand it and finish it. Right, what I'm doing now is using what's called a collet to hold the piece of wood, because these are very small now and they wouldn't, they'd split if they were put onto the ordinary lathe attachment. So we clamp them into here, and then they're only held here, and if I'm gentle I might be able to get away with it. If I can't, then I'm going to have to use the spoke shave. You see these four pieces clamp up here onto the plate of that, hold this in place. And at this point I just want to talk about it a bit. When I glued it together, I did the H shape first, which was in line with the edge of the chair, so I knew the angles. Then I could drill the angles of the legs, how I knew I'd want them. And then I could measure, because I made the H shape deliberately a bit longer than I required, then I could measure this to the way that those legs slotted in. And I could then cut them to the lengths and of course glue it all together. So the basics being done, we can take this satch clamp off now. There'll be a lot of sanding needed, and I've got to make a scraper as well yet. So I'm going to make a scraper and show you how to do your own scraper. As with taxidermy, quite a lot of this had to be invented. In other words, I had to find ways and tools of doing things with the few that I have. It would be wonderful to have a bandsaw. I don't have one. A big bandsaw would be so useful for cutting the backs of chairs and everything else. I've had to just make do with these small hand tools in this very small workshop. And also, with the difficulties I have physically, because of my arthritis now and damaged back, it's been quite painful doing this piece of work. Recently you may have seen a film of mine where I've actually taken my open water diving certificate. I was very proud to have done that. It may be I never dive again. It's quite possible I won't make a piece of woodwork like this again, because with age and with difficulties it just gets a bit much for me. So if I can do it, you can, is what I'm saying. And I've had to invent ways and make ways as much as possible to save myself from too much pain, or being able to actually be able to do this physically. Because using chisels now, using my arms to saw and so on, leaves me with quite a lot of difficulties afterwards. Last night was difficult to sleep because of the amount of pain in my arms and shoulders. And also I can't stand for very long either, so having to stand in the workshop for even 10-15 minutes and do a piece of work is difficult. So I need a stool in here at times to work on. So it's horses for courses. I'm pleased to show you how I achieve this. It's nice to share something when you do it. It's been another little adventure doing something like this, and I haven't finished yet. But it's been nice to invent ways of doing things as I've gone along. And of course it's lovely to achieve a piece like this, to actually make something. Very pleasing to do it. So I hope that what I've shown you will have given you some incentive to say, well, if he can do it, we can. And to use up old scraps of wood, as I've got here, a pile of wood that I took in from a painting that somebody couldn't fully pay for, and do something with them. As I say again, I don't pretend to be a professional woodworker, fantastic in that way. I just use the skills that I have and share them with you to make something that's rather fun, rather quaint, rather quirky. And in fact the most quirky part later is going to be these rods for the back, these spindles for the back, because I shan't be able to put these on the lathes now. I've discovered they're so brittle and so fine that they just snap off when I'm trying to turn them. So I'm going to have to invent a way to do these yet, and I haven't decided which, whether I use a spoke shave or whether I find better still an electric tool because of the difficulties I have with my movement. But you know, if we give up to such things, then we just wouldn't do anything, would we? So we have to keep going as much as possible. So I've got to find a way to round these off that's going to be easy for me, and if it's easy for me, therefore it will be easy for you. I've also found, by looking on the internet, new ways of doing some of this work. There are tools you can buy now on the internet, like mini chainsaws to go on an angle grinder and so on, for taking out wood. If you can afford to buy them, that's great. They're about £40 each, so not that bad. I wouldn't mind one day for carving, because it would certainly take away the waste wood, and various other grinding discs one can get. And one thing I heard on the other day on the internet when looking at somebody making a chair, as he said, if it looks right, it is right. And as far as I'm concerned, although this isn't perfectly square, it looks right enough, so to me it is right. It will do. So we'll now turn this upside down, and I'm going to make a scraper for it and show you how to do that, because we've got to save money. So an ordinary piece of metal from the local garage, and I should be able to make myself a nicely shaped scraper. They're about £9 each, again on the internet, so if I can get one for virtually nothing, it's going to help, isn't it? Now I've got to scrape off all this surface and get it as smooth as possible, and then sand it all down. Now this tool is a spoke shave, and it's how spokes used to be made for old wagon wheels. Just by pulling it towards us, we round off the rod. So it may be that I've got to do every single one of these rods with this, which will be a lot of work. I talked just now about making our own metal scrapers. Just been down to the garage, and Lee very kindly gave me a couple of pieces of milestone, and these will do for what we want to make. Right, well there we are then. That's given me a scraper with a flat side and rounded corners and a long rounded edge there. And because I've ground it that way, this edge has become burred, and that burr is going to be a nice scraper. The whole idea of the scraper is that we can now scrape downwards like this, across the wood, and down the grain. You see all the scrapings that are coming up here now. And get this, use both hands, get this right down. Right, all of these pieces are now spoke shaved down, just need sanding up. All I have to do is finish this last one and then sand them. And I've got to turn the ends down somehow to a 1/2 inch circle, because all of my holes are going to be 1/2 inch on this. Well, we're now working between the neck rest, the headrest, and the armrest now, and I've marked off on here and drilled pilot holes for where the actual spokes are going to go, spindles, and the same on here above. And I've just got to cut this piece of wood which goes down the centre now, and they're going to be a simple mortise and tenon, so I'll just cut in along there. And there we are, you see, simple shoulders and the tenon. That's it, and we've got to mark that off against this. We have to cut a hole in the bottom of this for this to fit into, like that. Just fit in there nicely, so I've got to mark around this joint here and there, then drill in and cut out with a mortise chisel. Well, unfortunately we lost a little bit of film. I don't know what went on with the camera, but we've lost making these parts in between. Since then I finished off making these back pieces, panels, and cut out the designs from them, got the mortises and tenons ready. I've cut all of the spindles to the right height. I've just got to take these ends down now to fit into the top rail, and the top rail is here. It's all been ready, drilled, jointed for the pieces to go on. So hopefully they'll all fit when I do. And I've got it at a very slight angle there going upwards, not just level but slightly upwards. And also this piece is now completed. You can see the back rail, and you can see the design I've done for the back panel there as well. And that's all ready and fits onto that top handrail. Right, well that's the bottom bit glued up, sash clamps on it and so on to hold it together, keep it in place. There we are, it's all put together and clamped up. Slightly cockeyed but rather fun and individual. And I think it looked lovely when it's all varnished up and cleaned up. So that's going to be the next job, to finish off the sanding, sealing coats, and then succeeding coats after that. Just a little bit of tidying up. Well, the chair's now strong enough to sit in, nice and comfortable. You can see here my arm's just the right height. Possibly I could have had the headrest a little bit higher for the back of my neck, but it's fine like it is. So now we've got to just finish this chair, got to lay it on its side, start the sanding and a bit of staining, and then a final varnishing. One very useful little machine is this one, a little belt sander, small belt here that I can just reach into the finer places to tidy things up. And of course the good old orbital sander. I want to bring the colour of the ash down to meet the colour of the yew. I've got some antique pine here which I'm hoping will do the job. And we've got some cold run antique pine here, we'll just see what that's like on there. And that's a lot nicer, it's a lot yellower. So it just shows you how much difference there is between the two there, look. Right, the next thing it's going to need is a sealing coat, and one thin coat of clear polyurethane all the way over it. And once this is soaked in and really dried off, it'll be able to sand the whole thing again and hopefully be able to bring it up to a smoother finish, which at the moment it's not. As you see, the varnish gives it a lovely lustre, brings out the colour again, but it will need this first coat and then sanding, and then another one and then light sanding again, and then possibly even one or two more. Begin to see how lovely the varnish will make the wood. And there we see the first coat of varnish on. here we are. Make your bed and lie in it, make your chair and sit in it. It's completed, as I say, not perfect, not a fine cabinet maker's piece, but I'm quite proud of it, quite pleased with it, and it might just give some of you an idea what you can do with some of that old timber lying around, if you've got a lathe to spare. Of course, I mean, a lot of this I haven't done with the lathe. I've had to do it just by spoke shave because it was too thin, or the wood was too brittle. But I hope you've enjoyed watching this. It's a very useful chair for me now because it's so much higher up. I have a job getting in and out of these other chairs these days. So for guests that have mobility difficulties, and for myself, this one is going to be very useful in the future. So we have to look to our futures, don't we, as well as enjoying ourselves making things, with all the difficulties we have. So maybe it will inspire you to do something like it. Yeah, I can get out of this one a lot better because it's a lot higher up.